Masechet Baba Kama Daf Kaf Vav. The Mishnah mentioned a Kal Vachomer by Rabbi Tarfon to teach that regel in Reshut HaYachid, Reshut HaNizak, hey, you have to pay a full amount. There's no difference between tam and mu'ad. So on the heels of that, we're going to bring a few more proposals of Kal Vachomer arguments that are going to end up with wrong conclusions, and so we'll have to bring a pasuk to say that we're not going to follow that conclusion. But without the pasuk, the logic of the Kal Vachomer would have proved otherwise. So here's proposal number one. Uteh shen veregel hayav bershut harabim mikal vachomer. Right now we know that shen and regel do not apply in the shut harabim because these are regular activities that the animal is doing, and so it's allowed to be in the shut harabim, and therefore the owner of the animal does not have to pay anything at all. But through the following kal vachomer, we could prove that the owner of the animal that does shen varegel damage should pay even in the shut harabim. Here's the Kal Vachomer. Uma keren shebreshut hanizak eno meshalem ela hasi nezek breshut harabim chayevet. So you have keren, where in reshut hanizak we're following Rabbanan here. Forget about Rabbi Tarfon. For Rabbanan, keren pays half nezek in reshut hanizak, and in reshut harabim it is liable. If it's tam, half. If it's mu'ad, all. But no matter what, it is chayav. Shen veregel shebreshut hanizak meshalem nezek shalem en odin shebreshut harabim hayav. Then shen and regel, where in the shut hanizak they pay full amount. In other words, you see shen and regel is more stringent than keren because keren only pays half in the shut hanizak. Shen veregel pays a full amount in the shut hanizak. Therefore, if shen and regel are more stringent, then in the shut harabim also it should be more stringent. And since keren pays chasi nezek for tam, so all the more so shen and regel should pay, right, something, half or maybe all of it, because there's no difference between tam and mu'ad when it comes to shen and regel, because it's just doing normal activity. And so maybe it would even pay a full amount. It would have to pay if you don't apply dayo. But that would be a wrong conclusion because we know that shen v'regel do not pay in the shut harabim, and so that's why we need the pasuk to say amar kera ubi'ayr b'stei acher v'lo b'shut harabim. Regarding shen and regel, the pasuk says if it consumes in someone else's field, only if it consumes in someone else's field, I am liable, but not in the shut harabim. Good. Now we bring back the challenge. Mide kule kamrinan, palga kamrinan. I know that pasuk already. That pasuk is just saying that you don't pay a full amount. I wasn't arguing that. I was arguing that at least you should pay chatzi nezek. And that's consistent with this pasuk. This pasuk teaches me don't pay a full amount for shen and regel in the shut harabim. And the Kal Vachomer will teach me that you do have to pay chatzi nezek in the reshut harabim. Amar kera vechasu et kaspo shel zeh velo kaspo shel acher. So we'll bring yet another pasuk. This one was from Shemot 22. Here's another pasuk from Shemot 21 that talks about dividing the monetary value. So it's talking about chasi nezek and says that kaspo, only this person, meaning the owner of an ox that gores, keren pays half, but not someone else. The kaspo, not just for chasu kesef or ha-kesef, but rather his, excludes someone else. Who is it excluding? It's excluding someone whose animal gores, doesn't gore, but rather causes damage by shen and regel. So therefore you have two pisukim actually to tell us that the shen and regel apply only in the shut hanizak, and you cannot apply the Kal Vachomer to the shut harabim. Okay, so that was all the first proposal. Here's another one. Velo teheh shen v'regel hayebet b'shut hanizak ela hasi nezek. We can prove from a Kal Vachomer that shen and regel, when it's in a shut hanizak, we know the law that shen and regel, one has to pay a full amount in the shut hanizak. But we can prove instead that one only pays half the damage, as follows: Mikal Vachomer mikeren uma keren shebeshut harabim chayevet beshut hanizak ena meshalemet ela hasi nezek keren in the Reshut Harabim, yes, you have to pay. And yet in the Reshut HaNizak, when he only has to pay a half amount, this is again according to Rabbanan, not Rabbi Tarfon. If so, Shen Veregel Shebeshut Harabim Petura, Shen and Regel is less stringent than keren, because in the Reshut Harabim you don't have to pay anything at all. En Odin Shebeshut HaNizak Mishalem Hasi Nezek, so all the more so that in the Reshut HaNizak, Shen and Regel should only have to pay half. Right? If, in other words, Shen and Regel is less stringent than keren in the Reshut Harabim, and then in the Reshut HaNizak, where keren pays only half, all the more so, Shen and Regel, which is less stringent, should also only have to pay half. Okay, that would be logical, and therefore the pasuk comes and says, Amar Kera Yeshalem Tashlomin Me'aliyah. Regarding Shen and Regel, the pasuk says you have to pay, and pay means a full payment, the entire amount. Now we ask another proposal. Let's propose that keren and the Reshut Harabim should not be liable at all. Now, we know keren and Reshut Harabim, if it's tam, has to pay chasi nezek. But let's try to prove that this is not so. Mikal v'chomer. Uma shen v'regel shebereshut hanizak nezek shalem bereshut harabim petura. Look, we're going to compare it to shen and regel, where in Reshut HaNizak he pays a full amount, and yet shen and regel Reshut Harabim doesn't pay anything at all. So keren shebereshut hanizak chasi nezek and odin shebereshut harabim petura. So then keren, which in Reshut HaNizak only pays half, so you see that keren is less stringent than shen and regel in Reshut HaNizak, because he pays a full amount and keren only pays half. Then all the more so that in the Reshut Harabim, keren should pay nothing. If nezek shalem doesn't pay anything, and keren is less stringent, so keren also should pay nothing in the Reshut Harabim. So this is logical, but we know this is not the conclusion. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Kera, Yechasun, and Hasi Nezek Chaluk, Lo B'Reshut Harabim, Velo B'Reshut HaYachid. Rabbi Yochanan explains that regarding a short time, it says you divide the money, and that means that we don't make any difference when regarding payment of Hasi Nezek between the Reshut Harabim and the Reshut HaYachid. It's all the same. And so you can't make a difference and say, oh, you're only going to pay the Chasi Nezek in the Reshut HaNizak. Right, that's where we were coming from. Chasi Nezek Reshut HaNizak, but you're not going to pay half in the Reshut Harabim. No, it's impossible, because it says Yechesun as a blanket statement. Shoratam always pays half no matter what. Okay, another proposal. Now the law, as we know it, and that will be the conclusion, is that kofed, ransom, is paid when my animal goes and kills someone, so I don't have to take the death penalty, I can pay kofed instead. If I kill a person directly, then I get the death penalty. However, I'm only going to get the death penalty if there are witnesses and they warn me and all the other requirements, which doesn't often happen. Let's say there are witnesses, but they didn't warn me before I murdered. Then I'm not going to get the death penalty. So what we're going to try to prove now is that let's say I'm not getting a death penalty and I kill someone. So just like if my animal kills someone, I have to pay ransom. Perhaps if I kill someone also, in a circumstance where I don't get the death penalty for a loophole, maybe I also have to pay ransom for my own act, not only for my animals. So we're going to prove that from a kal vachomer that this is so. As follows: If my animal harms someone, I only have to pay damages. I don't have to pay the other 4 payments of pain, medical costs, loss of livelihood, and humiliation. And yet, if my animal kills someone, I have to pay a ransom. So then a person who harms another person, where if I harm another person, I have to pay damages plus the other 4 types of payments. So we see that a person harming a person is more stringent than someone's ox harming a person. So if so, all the more so that if I kill someone, I would have to pay a ransom, right? If even when my animal kills someone, I have to pay a ransom, and that's less stringent than a human killing someone, and a human is more responsible, has to pay for all the 4 things in terms of damages, and these all 4 payments. So all the more so, if a person kills someone and for some reason doesn't get death penalty, would have to pay ransom. ransom. Okay, that's logical. It makes sense. Amar kera kechol asher yushat alav. That's why the pasuk regarding an ox killing someone and paying ransom says whatever is imposed upon him, alav. It could have just said asher yushat, whatever is imposed. You don't have to say alav, so that's a limiting word. Alav velo aladam. One only pays the owner of an ox who kills, but not a person who kills himself. So even in that case where I'm not getting death penalty because of a technicality, I also do not pay a ransom. Next proposal is, let's prove that if my ox damages a person, that I would have to pay damages plus the other 4 payments. From a kava chomer, mikava chomer, ma adam sheno chaya bechofer, chaya barba devarim. If I cause damage to someone, I do not pay damage. We just proved that, and yet I have to pay damages plus all the 4 payments. Shor shechaya bechofer, then shor, which is more stringent in that if my animal kills someone, I have to pay ransom, and odin shechaya barba devarim, all the more so if my ox damages someone, I should have to pay damages plus all 4 payments, because right in this regard my animal is more stringent, because my animal killing has to pay kofet even though I don't. So and also more so it should have to pay 4 payments, which I would have to pay if I caused the damage. Even though that's logical, amar kera ish ba'amito velo shor ba'amito. One only pays, this is regarding a person harming another person, one has to pay all the damages plus the 4 payments only if a person causes injury to another person, ba'amito, but this comes to limit, but not the ox of another person. If my ox harms a person, or if I harm someone's ox, I only pay damages and I do not have to pay for the other 4 things. So this shows the limitations of Kal Vachomer. There's lots of Kal Vachomers that you could make, but the Pesukim give the guidelines so that we do not get to the wrong conclusions just only based on those logical reasonings. Now that we started talking about kofed, we're going to ask another question about it. Generally, kofed applies to a case of goring, where an animal purposely does something violently and something out of the ordinary by goring. Now, for sure, it applies in the short mu'ad, that you have to pay kofed. There is a machloket about whether a short tam would have to pay half kofed. That'll come into play in a minute. But here's the question. Regel shedarsal gabe tinok b'chasad nizak ma'u shetashalem kofed. Does ransom payment apply to regel, where an animal is walking normally and steps on, just in the matter of walking, a baby? And it doesn't have to be a baby. We're using that because generally for an animal to kill an adult, it would have to go and kick it and gore it, do something that is keren. But if there's a small person just lying on the floor, it's easy for an animal to not realize and just step on it and with normal activity of trampling. And let's say it happens in Chasad Nizak, because regel only applies in Chasad Nizak, not Reshut Rabim. Would the owner have to pay ransom? Right? Does the whole category of kofed apply to regel, or does it only apply to keren? Here's the 2 sides. Mi amdinan midi dehava akeren keren kevan da'avad tere utatazimne urhehu umshalem kofed hachaname lashena. Do we say that it's the same as keren? Keren, just like with keren, once an animal does something 2 or 3 times, it becomes mu'ad, and meaning that it becomes its normal way, right? For even though keren is unusual for an ox, once it does it many times, then it becomes mu'ad, then it's its normal way. And so for acting in its normal, now that we know, normal, violent way, and kill someone, the owner pays kofed. So here also, regel is its normal way to begin with. It's just walking. And so it should be the same, and one should have to pay kofed if one's animal kills a person and a reshut hanizak, because it's walking normally. That's one side. Or keren kavanato lehazik. Hi, and kavanato lehazik. Or maybe the key factor of keren is not that, once it becomes mu'ad, that's its normal behavior, but rather keren is different because it has intention to damage. And that's why it has this extra payment that if it kills someone, I have to pay ransom for my life. whereas regel does not have intention to cause damage. It's just walking on its way, and therefore kofir should not apply to regel at all. All right, so that's the conceptually two sides of the question, and now we're going to try to prove it from a baraita. That in fact you would have to pay kofir. Now it's going to be a roundabout proof. We're looking at the assumptions behind the following statement. Tashema. If I take my ox and I bring it into your field without your permission, so this is reshut hanizak, and it goes and kills you and you die. Hashor biskila, the shor has to die because it killed someone. Ben tam ben muad mishalem kofer shalem dibrei Rabbi Tarfon, and the owner, whether the animal was tam or muad, I have to pay ransom. Now here we're talking about that it killed by goring, and so this is a matter of keren. And Rabbi Tarfon's chidush here is that even if it's tam, I still have to pay a full amount. So it's a kind of an equivalent, just like for damages. Even though when it's tam, it only pays half damages in the Reshut HaRabim, but according to the Rabbi Tarfon, I pay full damages if it breaks something in the Reshut HaNizak. So too regarding kofir, in Reshut HaRabim, we're going to see in a second, Rabbi Tarfon must assume that there's half kofir if it kills someone Reshut HaRabim, and his chidush is now in the Reshut HaNizak. One would pay full amount of kofir, even if it's only a shor tam. Now, how does the Rabbi Tarfon know this? Now, kofir shalem betam Rabbi Tarfon minale. How does he know that I pay full amount in the shoot for a tam animal when it's in the shoot hanizak? Lab mishum desavar lek Rabbi Yosei Galili. Now we're looking at his assumptions that would be behind a possible proof. First of all, it must be that he follows Rabbi Yosei Galili. Damar tam mishem chasi kofir Reshut HaRabim. So the baseline is that if it's shor tam, then in the Reshut HaRabim I only pay half of a kofir. Okay, given that, umaytila mi kal vachomer mi regel al ma'ika kofir beregel. Now it must be that he derives this from a kal vachomer, almost the same kind of kal vachomer that he brings in the Mishnah. And that kal vachomer would only be true if we assume that for regel, which would be the source material for the kal vachomer, that one would pay full amount of kofir for regel, and that would be the source, and then I could apply that to goring. The kal vachomer would look like the following. If regarding regel, where you don't pay at all in the Reshut HaRabim, and you pay full kofir, right? And so we're trying this out, assuming that the answer is yes. Regel pays full kofir in Reshut HaNizak. So that could be used as the basis of this kal vachomer, because I would prove from here that shen and regel, you don't pay any kofir in Reshut HaRabim. You do pay full kofir in Reshut HaNizak. Then regarding keren, where you pay half in Reshut HaRabim, all the more so you would pay a full amount. If for shen is generally less stringent, you see that in Reshut HaRabim, and yet you pay full kofir in Reshut HaNizak, so all the more so keren, which is more stringent, you would have to pay full amount in Reshut HaNizak. And so, therefore, this whole kal vachomer will only work if you assume that there is kofir for regel. And that must be his proof. So the answer is, right, at least according to Rabbi Tarfon, that yes, in fact, there is a full kofir for regel. So this seems to be a good proof. It's going to end up being accepted, this proof. But in the meantime, we want to challenge it a few times and say, not necessarily. Perhaps I could build a kal vachomer also without assuming that there is kofir for regel, as follows. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Harda'ah, Tana menizakin de regel ma'itila. No, I could build a kal vachomer assuming that for regel there's no kofir, but rather just from nizakin. And the kal vachomer would look like the following. If regarding regel, where you're exempt in Reshut HaRabim, and you have to pay a full amount in Reshut HaYachid, so now we're comparing the Reshuyot, that Reshut HaNizak is more stringent than the Reshut Harabim? If so, then goring, where you pay half amount when it's in Reshut Harabim, half the kofed in the Reshut Harabim, all the more so, you would pay a full amount if it was in Reshut HaNizak. In other words, I don't have to compare apples to apples. I'm going to compare apples to oranges. I'm going to compare the nizakin of regel, where Reshut HaYachid is that much more stringent than the Reshut Harabim, because for regel, for nezek in regel, pay full amount in Reshut HaNizak and nothing in the Reshut Harabim, and therefore I'll now transfer that and compare Reshut Harabim and Reshut HaNizak regarding kofer for keren, and say, if so, the Reshut Harabim is less stringent, and yet you pay half kofer there for a short time, all the more so you'd pay full kofer in the Reshut HaNizak, right? And comparing it to the nizakin. So they're comparable enough, and therefore I could build a kavach chomer without assuming that there is kofer for regel. And so now your proof falls away. But you know what? We're going to revive the proof by damaging this kavach chomer. V'lifroch ma'ale nizakin deregel sheken yeshnan be'esh. Hold on, we can see from fire that the fire has the same laws as regel, except that there is certainly no kofer regarding fire. If I send a fire and it kills someone, we proved in a baraita above on Daf Yod that there's no kofer there. So you see from here that there's no linkage between kofer and damages, because here Esh has all the same laws as regel, and there's for sure no kofer. So you see that these are not linked, and therefore this kavach chomer would not possibly work, and only the first kavach chomer works, and so kofer, there is kofer in regel, because that's the only way we can make a kavach chomer. But then we respond, no mitamun. You know what? We're going to make the kavach chomer from regel, that damages of regel, for something concealed. Because as we saw before, fire, I'm not liable if my fire damages something that was concealed, only for revealed things. So you know what? I'll take out revealed things and say only damage to tamun. I'm going to use regel for that damages something tamun as the basis of this same here kavach chomer, and then fire will be excluded. So I could revive the problematic kavach, the challenging kavach chomer. But then we reject that too when we say malatamun sheken yeshno bebor. Hold on, if I'm going to limit the damages to something that is concealed, that won't work because of bor. Bor, I'm liable to if my bor damages something concealed. For example, if there's a goat inside a bag and falls into the pit, I am liable. So tamun is not going to help. And bod also, we know that there is no law of kofer for bod. And so here now again we're decoupling kofer and damages and showing that they don't go together. So now I won't have this kavach chomer, the second kavach chomer here. And so we answer no mikelim. I could bring the kavach chomer from nizakin of regel regarding vessels, because the vessels I am not liable regarding a bod. So if I limit the kavach chomer to when a regel damages vessels, then I'll be able to build the kavach chomer and prove regel and prove that the full payment for keren in Reshut HaNizak, full payment of kofer, and I could use the kavach chomer just from regel if it damages kelim, because by having kelim that excludes bor, so I don't have to deal with that problem. But then we have a problem with that too, because ma'ale kelim sheyeshnan be'esh. You see, kelim I am liable if I cause damage to vessels with fire. Although vessels that fall into a pit I'm not liable, but fire that damages vessels I am liable, and so then I'm going to bring back the problem with fire. So we can solve both problems by saying mikelim timunim. Okay, I'm going to bring the kavach chomer of if my regel damages my animal's regel, damages hidden vessels where the laws of damage, the laws of pit and fire don't apply to those at all, and but regel does. And then I could make that same kal vachomer of regel where it doesn't apply in Reshut Rabim, but it does apply full amount in the Reshut HaNizak, and therefore you see Reshut HaNizak is so much more stringent, and so too for kofed, it's half damages of kofed and keren, and so all the more so it'll be full damages in Reshut HaNizak. And so I revived that second kal vachomer. But even this we're going to reject. Mali kelim timunim sheishnan ba'adam. Regarding a human that goes and does something, a human is liable in all these cases, including hidden vessels, and yet kofed does not apply to a human being. We just proved that in the previous sugya, that a person never pays kofed for something that he does himself, only for one's animal. And therefore, the grand finale is that this kal vachomer that Rav Shimi Medinat Yisrael brings to learn from nizakin of regel doesn't work, because we see that fire and pit, and then finally Adam, a human that does something, is liable in all the same ways as regel, and kofed, we know for sure, does not apply to a person. So therefore, kofed can't be the defining element. Is completely separate from nizakin, and therefore this kal vachomer does not work. If this kal vachomer does not work, then what's the bitarfon source? It must be this kal vachomer, the first one that we started with, that does assume that there is kofed regarding regel. Elalav shma mina mikofed de regel maitila al ma'ika kofed beregel shma mina. Must be that the bitarfon source is from a kal vachomer that assumes that kofed applies to regel, and therefore, yes, in fact, kofed applies to regel. So if someone's animal goes and is walking walking normally in the Reshut HaNizak, and my animal walking in your field normally goes ahead and steps on a baby, I will have to pay full amount of kofed. That is in fact true. And now that we come to this conclusion, Rav Acha tells Ravina, you know what, this really does make sense, because the opposite would not make sense. If you think that there is no payment of kofed if it kills someone with regel, and you go with that second kal vachomer of Rav Shimi that we were trying out, then we could have refuted that kal vachomer from regel itself, because nezek of regel, kofed does not apply to it, and so therefore that would be an exclusion. In other words, nezek of regel would refute the kal vachomer from regel itself, because you have all the laws of nizakin that are different in the Reshut HaRabim and the Reshut HaYachid, 0 and 100 payment, and that's true for regel of nizakin, and therefore you couldn't possibly bring that as a kal vachomer for keren, which is different. And so the only way that the kal vachomer could possibly work if there is kofed for regel itself, and then you're comparing two things that are the same, kofed to kofed. That's the only way the kal vachomer would work, and so your conclusion must be correct. Ela lav shema mina mikofed de regel maitila al ma'ika kofed beregel shema mina. Rather, must be the kal vachomer is assuming that there is kofed payment if my animal kills someone by regel, and since that is true, and regel doesn't pay anything in Reshut Rabim, it pays full amount in Reshut HaNizak for even kofed, or then all the more so regarding keren, where you pay half kofed in Reshut Rabim, then certainly you should pay full kofed in Reshut HaNizak. Shema mina. We now come to the next, a very important Mishnah. Adam mu'ad le'olam, ben shogeg, ben mezid, ben ayr, ben yashen, simeh et ein habero, v'shibed et hakelim, meshalem nezek shalem. A human being is considered always forewarned, right? We are given the gift of having a brain and reasoning, and therefore we can't say, oh, I didn't realize, I didn't intend. No, you have to know your surroundings and yourself, and be a defensive driver, and make sure not to put yourself in any situation that would cause damage. And therefore, a person is liable for any damages he causes, even if it's whether it's unintentional, and certainly if it's intentional. Of course, unintentional, we're going to see, has to be some level of negligence. If it's complete honest, completely out of one's control, then even a person will not be liable. But even if he didn't intend to cause damage, but was negligent in some way, one has to pay for the damages. And certainly if you intend to, whether one is awake or even sleeping, even though you're sleeping, you still are liable. And again, here it would only be if it's negligent. Yerushalmi explains that, if I didn't look around at my surroundings before I went to sleep, and then while I'm sleeping I knock over a vase that I saw beforehand, well, I should have been more careful and moved the vase on the night table before I went to sleep, because I know I turned in my sleep. However, if I looked around and there was nothing around, and then someone, while I was sleeping, put something very delicate right at the edge of the night table, and then while I'm sleeping I didn't realize and knocked it over, I would not be liable, right? Because that would be a similar difference between shogeg and honest. But the point is that you can't just say, well, I was sleeping. You have to be aware of, when you go to sleep, that it's in a safe place. So now 2 examples. If I cause my friend's eye to be blinded, I knock out his eye, or if I cause damage to his vessels, so whether it's to his person or to his vessels, I have to pay a full amount, even if it's the first time. There's no tam, there's no mu'ad. A person is mu'ad always. Good. Now some clarifications. Katane sime et ayin habero dumya de shiber et hakelim. Interesting that the Mishnah brought these 2 cases. It must be trying to point out a similarity between them. That blinding someone else's eye is similar in some way to breaking his vessels. Mahatam nezek in arba devarim la af sime et ayin habero nezek in arba devarim la. Just like there in broken vessels, I have to pay for damages, but not for the other 4 things. In general, the other 4 items, pain and medical cost and humiliation and getting off from work, those things only apply when a person harms another person, human to human. If I damage your vessels, even on purpose, whatever, I only pay for the damages, not for the other 4 things. And so that's why it's bringing Shibet HaKelim to compare that to knocking out his eye. Even though knocking out his eye is a damage to his person, the Chidush here is that if it's done when I bishogeg or while I am sleeping, then I do have to pay damages, but not for the other 4 things. So there is still a difference, even though Adam Mu'ad Le'olam, I am forewarned, but the forewarning only means that I have to pay full payment for damages. When it comes to the other 4 things, that only applies if I do it while awake and on purpose to the person's body. Then I have to pay the other 4 things, but not otherwise. Okay, that's an important clarification. Now, what's the source? Amar Chizkiah v'chen tana debe Chizkiah is interesting. Chizkiah, the Amorah says it, but the Chizkiah's yeshiva also has a baraita that says the same thing. This is curious how they have a baraita from the Tanaim, even though Chizkiah also has an Amoraic statement saying the very same thing. It could be that sometimes an Amorah says something and then it's memorized and with a fixed formula. Once it's memorized as a fixed formula, sometimes it's not clear. Was this a fixed formula from the Amorah himself, or was he repeating a Tanaitic tradition? So it seems that it was transmitted in both ways. Amar kera pesa tachat pasa l'chayabal shogeg kemezid v'ala ones kerason. Pasuk says that one has to pay wound for a wound, but this whole pasuk is superfluous because this is in Shemot. There's already a pasuk like that in Vayikra. So what do I need this pasuk at all for? To tell me that not only if I do it on purpose, but also if I do it bishogeg, I am liable, and not only if it is an accident, and then not only if I do it willingly, but also if it's an accident. Okay, accident here, again, doesn't mean that it was totally beyond my control. It just means as opposed to willing, as opposed to intentional, even if it's unintentional and not willing, an accident, I am liable. But again, as long as there's some amount of negligence, as we're about to see. Okay, hi mi ba'ele liten sa'ar b'makom nezek. Hold on, you're using this pasuk, Pesa Tachapasa, to teach me that even if it's unintentional I have to pay. I already used that pasuk for something else. That the fact to teach me that I have to pay for pain even though I'm paying for compensation. I might have thought that, when do I pay you for pain? Let's say I step on your toe, but I don't cause any physical damage, right? You feel pain for 5 minutes, and then you're totally fine. So there's no payment for damage because I didn't cause any damage, but you did feel pain. I might have thought I only pay for pain when there's no damage. But in the case where there is damage, let's say I step on your toe and I break your toe, and then that there's damage there, and you can't function the way you did before, and I'm paying you damages, then I wouldn't have to pay for pain, right? Because I'm already paid for damage. I already paid because of it. Now it's broken. So you might think that, and therefore, pasuk Pesa Tachapasa, we learned elsewhere, teaches me that you have to pay for pain in addition to damage, and all the 4 payments are in addition to damage, not instead of. Okay, so I already need the pasuk for something else. So how can you use it again? Well, just to teach me that I have to pay pain and damages, it could have said a shortened form, a wound for wound. My tachat pesa. What do I have to add? Wound for a wound. Well, in English it translates the same, but in Hebrew you're adding another word, shemamina tariteh. So in fact I could learn 2 different laws from this one phrase, and so that's how I know that I am liable for damages, even if I do it by mistake. Amar Rabba, hayta even munachat lo becheko velo hikir ba. Okay, let's say I'm sitting down and somehow a stone got onto my lap and I didn't see it. I didn't see it at all before I sat down. While I was sitting down, someone snuck up and just put a stone onto my lap, and I'm just sitting there and reading a book, and I had no idea that the stone was there. Ve'amad ve'nafla. Then I stand up, which I'm allowed to do. I'm just standing up. I'm not intending to cause damage because I have no idea that there's a stone there. But sure enough, the stone falls and causes damage. So we're going to analyze the law for different purposes, and this is very interesting. Linyan nizakin chayav. If that stone falls down and breaks something on its way down your vessel, or it lands and causes damage to you, lands on your foot or something, I am liable. You see here, even though it was unintended, unwitting, unplanned, and nevertheless I am liable. Now it has to be talking about a case where I'm standing up and I should have checked around me. Before you stand up, you should check and make sure that there's nothing that's going to fall. And so there is some amount, it has to be a case where there's some amount of negligence there. There's people around, there's sensitive things around on the floor, and so you don't just pop up and who knows what's going to happen. So even when one person's standing up, even though you're not intending to, you should just check to make sure that everything is safe before you go and stand up. And so because he was even a little bit negligent, nevertheless, one is liable for damages. Adam mu'ad le'olam. Okay, and now, linyan arba devarim patur. But do I have to pay for, let's say I stand up quickly without looking, and I didn't know the stone was there, but it lands on your foot and I cause you pain and you're out of work and you have to go to the hospital and all that. I do not have to pay. I only pay for damages and not for the other 4 things because I didn't do it on purpose. I only pay the other 4 things if I caused you pain on purpose. Okay, linyan Shabbat, melechet machshevet asrat Torah. Let's say by standing up and the stone falling down, I violate Shabbat. Let's say I was in the Shut HaYachid and then I stand up and it goes and falls off the porch and goes into the Shut HaRabim. So I am patur, because in order to violate Shabbat mid-deoraita, I have to do something machshevet. I have to do something that's planned constructive labor that I'm planning to. I need the stone to be over there, and I plan to do it and do it on purpose. Only then I am liable for on Shabbat. So therefore, not so here. I'm not liable for Shabbat. Linyan galut patur. Let's say I stand up quickly again, and the stone falls down on someone's head and kills the person. person, I do not have to go into exile because this is completely accidental. That was a total accident. Galut is only required for someone who was negligent. He kills someone. He doesn't intend to kill someone, but he was negligent. He didn't check his axe carefully and he's swinging it around. So that person, and it flies off, that person goes into exile, but not sufficient for this. So this is actually quite interesting that this very small amount of negligence is enough to require me to pay damages, but not enough that makes me have to go into exile. Do not have to go to exile for this. Now, linyan aebed, let's say the stone falls down and lands on my slave and knocks out his tooth. So a slave generally goes free. Eved Kanani goes free if I'm the master and I knock out his tooth. But here I did it by mistake. So does he go free? That depends on the machloket. Pilukta de Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel v'Rabbanan detanya haresh haya rabo rofeh. Avamar lo kechol ani v'simea hator li shini v'pila sichek ba'adon v'yasa leherut. Here Braita teaches that let's say the master is a doctor and the slave comes and says, listen, I have an eye disease. Would you mind putting some ointment in my eye with a Q-tip or something, with a eyeshadow brush? And then the owner, who is a doctor, but even doctors can slip, and by mistake, instead of putting the ointment on, he knocks out his own slave's eye. Or his master is a dentist or an amateur dentist. And the slave says, would you mind scraping my tooth? It's hurting. And in the end, while he's doing that, by mistake, he knocks out the tooth. So what happens? The slave will laugh. Usually if someone's tooth gets knocked out, they're going to be sad. But the slave is happy. He says, ha ha, right now I get to go free. So he can laugh in a toothless laugh in front of his master, and he goes free. So that's Tanakama, who says, even though the master did it by mistake, he knocked out his eye or tooth by a mistake, nevertheless, he goes free. It's just a fact. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer v'shihata ad sheitkaven l'shahata. But Rashbag says, no, the pasuk says, and he destroys his eye or his tooth. That's only if he intends to destroy it. Then the slave goes out, but not in these cases. And therefore, we'll apply the same machloket to the case of where I stand up and the rock falls out of my lap and knocks out his eye, or knocks out my slave's tooth. According to Tanakama, he would go free. And according to Rashbag, oh, sorry, it was a mistake. You do not go free. All right, that's all case number one. And now we're going to change the case a little bit and see how it applies to all the other scenarios. Hikir ba ushchacha. Let's say I did know the stone was there. I put it there, or I saw someone put it on my lap while I was sitting. I knew that the stone was there. But then I'm reading a book, I'm talking, I'm thinking. An hour later, I stand up and I forgot that the stone is there. So now, again, it's not quite on purpose that I want the stone to fall down and cause some problem, but it's not completely negligent because I did have an awareness beforehand that the stone is there, and I should have been more careful. This is like I make sure never to put my glasses on a bed or a chair, right? Because even though right now I know that they're there and I'm not going to sit on it, but then I'm going to go do something and then come back and just sit on the chair, and I know I'm going to forget, and then I'll sit on my glasses. So I'm more careful. I make sure not to be negligent, knowing that I will forget in the future, and I make sure to not put my glasses on a chair. If I see them on a chair, I'll move them to a table or somewhere higher that I'm not going to sit on them. So here also, even though it's not on purpose, it's pretty negligent to forget about the stone on your lap and then stand up. So, but if I did, v'amad v'nafla, and the stone fell and caused damage, li'anan nizakin hayav, certainly I am liable to compensation because Adam mu'ad le'olam, can't make excuses. Le'inanu arba'a devarim patur, but if it causes damage to a person and causes him pain and to be out of work, I do not have to pay because I didn't do it on purpose. Even though I was negligent, still it's not on purpose. Le'inyan galut hayav, in this case, if I knew the stone was there, I get up rashly, not thinking about the stone, and knocks on someone's head and kills them, I have to go into exile. I don't get the death penalty. I didn't intend to kill him, but I was very negligent, and therefore I have to go into exile. Bishkaga, Bishkaga, right, means unwittingly, but it means that there was knowledge, right? That I did have some idea that this was that I was in a dangerous situation. And in this case, I had awareness that it was a dangerous situation, and still I didn't take steps to as precautions, and therefore I am liable for exile. Li inyan Shabbat patur. If it falls down and moves into from Reshut HaYachid to Reshut HaRabim, it's still not melechet machshevet. I was not planning on doing this, and therefore I'm not liable for Shabbat. Inyan Eved Piluktad Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel v'Rabbanan. If it knocks out a tooth of a slave, that will be subject to the same machloket we saw before. For Rabbanan, he would go free, but for Rashbag, the slave would not go free because I did not do it on purpose. Next scenario, nitkaven lizrok shetayim vezarak arba. I have a stone and I intend to throw it only 2 amot, but what do you know? I'm stronger today than I thought, and it travels farther. It travels 4 amot and causes damage. I am liable if it causes damage to something or a person, even though I meant to throw it only a little bit, but it ended up going farther, but that's pretty negligent, and so I am certainly liable to damages. They're not about the varim patur, but if it goes and causes you pain and be out of work and medical costs and shame, I do not have to pay for those things because I didn't intend for it to cause you damage. And for Shabbat, I'm also patur because I did not plan. This, let's say it's in the Reshut HaRabim, and so if I throw it 2 amot, I'm not liable because you're only liable for carrying on Shabbat by carrying something or throwing something 4 amot or more. So even though in the end it went more than 4 amot, but I didn't plan to do that. I only plan to throw it a little bit, and therefore I'm not liable, even though it goes 4 or more. That's not melechet machshevet. Leinan galut asher lo sada marachamana perat nitkaven lizrok shetayim vezarak arba. I do have to go into exile in this case because the pasuk says regarding murder, if it was premeditated, I lay in wait, I had a whole plan, I did it on purpose, then that would be murder, and that would require capital punishment. But if not, if I did not plan it, I did not intend it, right? Then I go into exile, and so this asher lo sada will also exclude this case where I only plan to throw it 2 amot, not to throw it 4 amot where it would reach you, and so I did not plan for this to reach you and kill you. In the end, it did, very negligent, but not on purpose, and therefore I have to go into exile. Linyan ayabed piluktad Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel v'Rabbanan. If I throw the rock only 2, I just mean to lob it out of the way, but I had extra strength, I didn't realize, and it hits my slave and knocks out his tooth. So according to Rabbanan, my slave will laugh and say, "Thank you, I'm out of here," even though I didn't mean it. The slave goes free. According to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, I tell him, no, I didn't mean it, and therefore you remain a slave. And finally, last scenario. Nitkaven lizrok arba vezarak shemoneh. If I meant to throw it 4 amot, and it ended up going 8 amot. This will make a difference regarding Shabbat, as we'll see. Linyan nezekin hayav. And then if I only meant 4, but it goes 8 and it hits you and causes you damage, I have to pay damage because adam mu'ad le'olam. Linyan arba'a devarim patur. To pay you for your pain and medical cost, I don't have to because I didn't do it on purpose. Linyan Shabbat be'omer kol makom shetirse tanuach in. Now regarding Shabbat, here's the difference. I intended to throw it 4 amot, which is a violation of carrying in the Reshut HaRabim. And it went 8 amot, which is also a violation. But my intention and the actual act were both violations of carrying 4 amot or more. So here, in order to satisfy melechet machshevet, has to be that I also plan to do something constructive, something that I wanted to do. So therefore, if I threw it and said, I don't care where it lands, right? I don't want it here. I want it somewhere over there and beyond. And so, but I don't care if it's 4 amot or 8 amot or 6 amot, wherever it lands is fine with me. And that's my intention. Then my intention was fulfilled. It was satisfied. And that's called melechet machshevet, right? I intended to throw it more than 4 amot in some place, and it went to a place that I was satisfied with. So then I would be liable for the death penalty, stoning, if it was with witnesses who warned me, and so on. But if not, I wanted it to be at that spot in 4 amot. I wanted it to be there specifically. And then I overthrew it and it went 8 amot, even though I violated carrying because it went more, but I did it in a way that was not melechet machshevet, because it was not done as planned for a constructive purpose that I had in mind, and therefore I am not liable if I threw it 4 and I wanted it to be only 4 and it went 8 instead. Regarding going to galut, I will still have to go into exile if it kills someone, because I did not plan. It was not premeditated. I did not plan to kill the person, and so just like if I don't plan to kill a person and I go into exile, in this case also I planned for it only to go 4 amot. I did not plan to reach you at 8 amot and kill you, and therefore I have to go into exile. Inan Eved Piluktad Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel v'Rabbanan, and the same is for if it kills my slave who was standing 8 amot away, but I only intended to throw it 4, and knocks out his tooth. According to the Rabbanan, he goes free, and according to Rashbag, he does not. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.